This is interesting because this is from an email titled Impact Entertainment.
Right.
So I don't know if this Impact Wrestling somebody or subject is Cult of Cornette. Hello, everyone. Hope your day is going well. Want to give a little more clarification on the Cornette and Dave Meltzer fan base. Yes, some of the stuff Disco says is true. Reason being is Jim won't forgive Kenny Omega for wrestling the little girl in Japan who he thinks is Riho all grown up. He doesn't like the Young Bucks for spreading lies about him back in the Ring of Honor days, where even his co-host Brian Last attended, and he saw them personally burying him. Started with Jim being able to fly out some talent and not the Bucks due to costs. Jim and Brian have put them over at times in their podcast, but in his mind, if you make wrestling business a joke, you get in with the Invisible Man stuff, the grande spot at the grenade spot at PWG, hardcore stuff, etc. His falling out with Dave was due to Dave liking his style and being biased to some wrestlers in company with star ratings, which leads to Dave's group saying they were out of touch. They would end up stop talking to each other, but Dave would bring up Cornette's name unnecessarily on Twitter, which would Cornette off and tell him to leave him alone and doesn't want anything to do with him. Sorry for the long email. My question is, what are you guys' thoughts now knowing some of this? And thank you for the podcast, guys. I knew all of this anyway. I've listened to Cornette. This is all bro. This is what Cornette is. Cornette has it out for Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. Doesn't like their style. Doesn't like the being the elite stuff and making fun of the business and doing spots in wrestling that make fun of the business and treating it like a joke and stuff.
Kenny wrestling the little girl,
which those guys absolutely have done. Okay, and their historical kind of everything they've done in professional wrestling, that's stuff that's in their history, and you can't argue that, right? Mm-hmm. So when that extrapolated into Dave, so Cornette and bro, Mark Madden told me this too, because Madden and Cornette were friends back in the day, and they had a falling out, right? Cornette. He says Cornette always falls out with people that disagree with him on things. Right. Like if you're not on his side on things, the stuff you just like Kenny Bolin. Like if you end up disagreeing with Cornette on something, he'll just just like excommunicate you. Which is like he has his cult of Cornette, like his fan base, and his fan base will then join in his battle and against whoever he's deciding against. But I've listened to a lot of Cornette's clips and. He's ultimately kind of offended that Dave thinks that guys like Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks are in Meltzer's mind will go down in history as better than like the Midnight Express and Terry Funk and stuff like that. That's what Jim off is that Dave's star ratings rise above with Young Bucks matches and everything like even like Midnight Express versus Rock and Roll Express stuff back in the day. And he thinks that's ridiculous. And then his fan base thinks that's ridiculous. Dave's fan base and Dave, too, will kind of like he would take shots at Cornette. Hey, the reason Cornette doesn't like the Young Bucks and doesn't like Kenny Omega, this narrative is because Jim is out of touch. And that is ultimately that turned into their conflict. But,
I don't know if you knew this, Di, but back in the day, Cornette was very against Kevin Owens and Sammy when they were Kevin Steen and Generico. They'll never make it. All Steen wants to be is a 2,000 people in a rec center. He's never going to be. So as soon as Owens got big and won the belt and stuff, people were coming after Cornette like crazy. Like, I thought he wasn't going to be. That's another group of guys that he had problems with.
However, let me make a point here. That is true about Sammy and Kevin Owens, though, bro. You can listen to like Cornette would butt heads with those guys because Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens are very outspoken, right?
Opinionated, yeah, sure.
Opinionated. It took them a long time in their careers through Indies, Ring of Honor, NXT to get to the main roster in WWE. And you would even hear, Arn, who is an agent for WWE, stuff like that, would say, yeah, these guys are kind of hard to work with because they're very opinionated. You know what I'm saying? But what happens is when you're very opinionated and stuff, and then you're hard to work with, bro. When you get over, that kind of trumps everything. Mm-hmm. And it's like those guys were not over to the level that they are now, which is kind of why go ahead.
Let me address that.
Go ahead.
As you know, Disco, because you've been with me a long time, I was always very opinionated.
So was I.
Because
I like you were right.
Yeah, I always had heat. Yeah,
right.
So, but the problem is that I knew when something wasn't good for me and I was going to fight it. I was like, that's not a good idea. I don't want to do it. Why don't you want to do it? Because of this, this, and this. All right, give me a better idea. And I would, right? And usually they would go with what I would say, but I would have to fight. So at the end of the day, Sami Zayn and Steen, maybe they were giving him stuff they didn't like, they didn't agree with, or they had better ideas. And at the end of the day, they were right, because both, you know, look at how they've gotten over WWE with their own personal storylines, right? So now, as far as Dave and when this guy says, "Oh, what did he say that Cornette and Brian Last, is that the guy's name?
Yes,
we're putting something over." Okay, I don't care what guys like Brian Last and all these other guys put over, because to me, they're just fans. And yeah, a fan's viewpoint is valid every now and then, but at the end of the day, I'd rather hear Jim Cornette's viewpoint. The problem with Jim is that, okay, the Fantastics were great, the Midnight Express were great, but we're in a different era. And if you're worried about Kenny Omega wrestling with a girl and all these people making fun of wrestling, bro, WWE as a company, AEW, they've done way worse. You know what I'm saying? To make fun of the business. Too late on that one. I just think that it's a shame that Dave and Cornette are guilty of the same thing. They don't like people disagreeing with them. They were good friends. Now they're not. Cornette is no longer friends with Bolin because he was on the Russo show. Cornette, when I was at MLW, didn't want to come on the show if Madden was on the show. Okay? You know, but Dave is great friends with me, but he doesn't want to come on the show because he doesn't like some of the stuff you said with him. And I'm like, bro, you've never ambushed him. You've never been disrespectful when you were on the show before. You have no problem being surly on Twitter, but you won't come on the show. It's almost sad, ridiculous, funny, and stupid at the same time. Bro, we're only here for a while. And what really is that what you're arguing about? You know, bro, let me just say this. I had huge problems with a lot of people in my career, and their ego would have never let them come to me. So I went to them because our friendship was more important than my ego. You know what I'm saying?
I would say this too. I wonder if it's because those guys are getting up there in age, if they don't want to waste their time arguing with people when you don't have to. Like, Dave doesn't have to come on the show. I'd like him to come on the show because we disagree on a lot of things. I'm aware of
that. But you're not here to ambush him, disrespect. You never did it before.
Right. I've never done it with anybody.
Right.
You know? I don't know.
Yo, what up? This is Konnan, and I host Keeping It 100, my co-host, Disco Inferno, unfortunately.
Well, I'd say you're my co-host.
Listen, every Thursday here on Spreaker, we talk pro wrestling, sports, movies, music, TV, pop culture, and some politics. It's everything the rest of the pro wrestling podcasts are not.
Tune in to hear myself, the superior one, educate and inform.
Tune in to hear me bury Disco.
That's very disrespectful.
Join us every Thursday on Spreaker and keep it 100. Boom!